about 39% scored well on that particular competency or behavior. The one that was scored lowest was the one about involving others. So only 25% of the leaders interviewed scored high on involving others. And this competency involves listening, it involves seeking out people's opinions, being able to deal with mistakes. Very difficult for a very driven and focused leader to stop and involve others. And then 40% scored high on being accountable, because this is something that leaders are used to being held true to, and many of them having that high D type of behavior are pushing along for results. The point is that you have to have all three of these in a mixture, and all of them have to be performed at a high level to be a collaborative leader. And that is really the challenge. So if you are a leader and you're listening in on this telephone today, think about yourself and think about where you would score in terms of being able to redefine goals, involve others, and be accountable. And we're going to dig down and take this to an even more simple level so we can really see what these three behaviors are all about. Because without these three behaviors, you just don't have a collaborative leader, and obviously without a collaborative leader, you don't have a collaborative initiative. So the first one, being able to redefine goals, this is a quality of really being a big picture thinker. And if you want to do a little bit of self-analysis as we go along, you can check mark mentally where you know you're good and maybe where you've got some opportunities. So the big picture thinker is focused on goals bigger than their own team or unit. This means they have to seek common ground with other leaders cross-functionally. They have to discourage internal competition, break down those kinds of barriers, and get people to focus on the big picture when there's disagreement. So think about yourself and how you're able to pull off that competency. The second competency is involving others. And in a collaborative initiative, this means really encouraging others to share their viewpoints, going through healthy debates, being empathetic, being open-minded, asking questions, and listening with purpose, listening for meaning, listening for people's agendas, and getting people to transcend their own agendas, inspiring them with your collaborative initiatives so they'll move out of their own comfort zone and silo and collaborate with others. And then the third one is accountability. And accountability is really the upside of collaboration, because without accountability, we don't get the results. So we can have a wonderful time selling people on the big picture. We can do a great job of inspiring and involving others. But if we don't take accountability for ourselves and for others, results just don't happen. So accountability means if you are making mistakes, take responsibility quickly and move on. Absolutely demand accountability in others. Hold people responsible for their actions, and don't get drawn into being defensive or blaming. The most important thing the collaborative leader has to do is seek common ground among people who have different goals and different agendas, set a unifying goal, and then get people working towards that goal. Just in terms of this slide, think about yourself in terms of the three competencies, and are you able to demonstrate them? You can use this A, to celebrate your own successes as a collaborative leader, and B, to focus on one or two things you may want to work on going forward to be more effective. There's a couple of personal barriers that I think are worth mentioning. One of them is the need for power. When leaders have a strong craving for power, they tend to want to stick to their own agendas and are less inclusive because they see inclusiveness as giving up power. Arrogance, according to Hansen and Lehman, was the biggest factor involved in working against collaboration. Arrogant leaders tend to think, I know best, or I'm smarter than others, and don't involve others in their decisions as much as they could. Defensiveness is another huge barrier. If I open up to others, I may have to admit I'm wrong. And the last one is fear. Generally, the fear of losing, the fear of humiliation. So we may want to ask ourselves, how easy is it for leaders to tear down their personal barriers? Many leaders have developed a certain leadership style that has worked really well for them in the past or in certain situations. They're comfortable in their style. They've even been promoted because of their style and have come to believe this is the way to lead. So developing a collaborative style takes time, commitment, and effort. And in your company, you can use the behaviors in action on this slide to help your leaders who are eager to be collaborative to develop the necessary behaviors. The next slide is all about the collaborative conversation. So there's 4 components to having a collaborative conversation. The first one is tone, and tone means the tone of voice. The tone of voice often transmits more to team members than any words could do. When some managers talk, the message is my way or the highway. Speaking with unnecessary authority often inhibits gaining input, sharing, and collaboration. The important thing about the tone of voice as a collaborative leader is to use a voice tone that you would use with friends. It often produces better results than trying to sound like an expert or a manager. The second component is body language. 70% of communication is nonverbal. It involves listening with your eyes. Once again, think of the body language you'd use with friends. Sitting down when having a discussion rather than standing over a friend. We would never do that if we were meeting friends. So sitting down levels the situation. Leaning forward to show interest. Watching facial expressions, making sure we have an empathetic expression on our face when friends are sharing a tough experience. It's all about open and receptive body language. Smiling, eye contact, open palms all show you are in an open and receptive frame of mind. Nodding encouragingly while they are talking says, I'm interested in you. Excuse me. So watch the body language, because often that is transmitting the wrong message. The words are coming out correctly, but the body language is in disconnect. The third component is asking questions. Questions show you interested. They help the individual to expand and build on his or her own ideas. As a collaborative leader, be curious as to why someone says something. Use comments like, that's an interesting approach, or tell me more. And the last component of the collaborative conversation is to validate and focus. Validate opens people up. Validation opens people up excuse me, and frees them to communicate with you. Ways to validate others involve acknowledging their feelings, offering to listen, being there for them in terms of physically being there and emotionally being there, being patient, being non-judgmental, and using phrases like, I hear you, or that's not fun, that's tough, or maybe, sure, I would feel the same way as you, I understand. Or this sounds like it's really important to you. Behavior and statements to validate help people work out their own solutions and problems much better and more effectively than just giving them advice or telling them how to do it. The focus part is there to get them back to results and accountability. Remembering the secret to collaboration is that balance between involving others and supporting others, and also helping them to stay focused on goals and be accountable for their actions and behaviors. The next slide takes us through the stakeholders in collaboration. And this is important. Sometimes a plan falls apart because we don't include the necessary stakeholders. The stakeholders are anyone who has a stake in a given situation. It requires a mindset of openness and inclusion. If you leave out important stakeholders, your efforts will be weakened or even doomed to fail from the start. Anyone who's not a formal decision maker but can block or severely delay implementation of a decision is a key stakeholder. If you exclude people who really understand the problem and have relevant expertise, then you may draw conclusions that are flawed. If you don't involve and win the support of those people who will have to implement the solution, you may encounter in